Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Steven Shalowitz, first reminding you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. Once again, jnf.org. And in just a short while, I'll be sharing with you info and dates for the upcoming Jewish National Fund USA Conference 2023. Yes, it is 2023, so do get your calendars out for that. But first, we here on IsraelCast love featuring up the phenomenal technology being developed in Israel. And on this episode, our attention is focused on strides made in the field of IVF, in-vitro fertilization. One woman who's leading the charge is Daniella Gilboa, our featured guest here on the program. Daniella is an accomplished clinical embryologist, biostatistician, and IVF researcher. In 2018, together with Professor Daniel Seidman, they co-founded AIVF. It's a rapidly growing medical technology startup transforming fertility by using artificial intelligence. Wrap your head around that for a moment. Danielle will be sharing with us exactly how that's done in the course of our conversation, which begins right now as Daniella Gilboa joins us via Zoom from her home in Ra'anana, Israel. Welcome to IsraelCast, Daniella.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, listen, it's so lovely to welcome you aboard. Listen, anytime we can talk about high tech in Israel is a good day in my book. So really, I'm going to be absolutely riveted, I'm sure, by what you have to tell us and the work that you and the team are doing. But first, if you can just add context, really, and describe exactly what IVF is and how does it work, because I think we all hear about IVF over the last several decades, but really, if you can describe exactly how it works.
So IVF is, I think, safe to say, one of the most important developments in medicine in the last 50 years. The technology won a Nobel Prize in 2010. And I think changed the lives of so many people. The first baby was born in England in 1978. So this
Louise Brown, I remember. Listen, I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah. So this July, which is now, we're celebrating 45 years of IVF, which is a phenomenon. It's a great achievement for us as a society. So this is IVF in general, but what we are seeing, I think, the last decade or so is that the success rates are pretty much not as they should be. It's about 25 to 30% in general across all age groups. And it's just not good enough.
Right. And when we talk about IVF, it is in vitro fertilization. So
Right.
It's marrying the egg with the sperm to create an embryo.
Exactly. So we'll take the egg and the sperm, we fertilize it, we follow the embryo for about 5 to 6 days in the IVF clinic, and then we have to choose the embryo that has the highest probability to implant, to become a baby. And this is the number one question, the $1 million question in all IVF clinics all over the world is which embryo will become a baby. And the fact that, the fact that in IVF, we're trying to optimize the women's cycle. Instead of one egg, we have 10, 15. So you might end up with 8, 10, 12 embryos. And this is where the embryologist, like myself, which is a developmental biologist, need to grade or evaluate the embryo and to try to figure out which one of these embryos has the highest potential to become a baby. This is crucial. So if I miss, the couple, the people who are trying to get pregnant miss. It's all
And that's a lot of pressure to put on
Yes.
the embryologist. I mean,
Yeah.
because I don't want to say you're playing God, but in a way you're playing God, aren't you?
I'm not playing God. It's one of those crucial decisions that you have in medicine in general. So this is the one of the crucial decisions in IVF. And yes, and this is where the human subjectivity comes in. So if you have, this is where it's not standardized, it's very, very based on the domain expert, on the human subjectivity. And just imagine you could take the subjectivity out and put in something that's more standardized, that is not tired, not hungry, not worried, not, could operate 24/7, you would make it much better, right?
Yeah, because you have because you have these embryos, just to reiterate, and you have to decide which is going to be the most viable.
Right,
And so
exactly.
currently what sort of data does an embryologist look at? What are the data points for that?
So we look at embryos, at images of embryos or videos of embryos. I could actually show you if you want. So we look at embryos, and many labs now are able to look at videos of embryos and see the actual development and look for specific milestones in the developing embryo, timestamps or developmental events that we know are correlated to different outcomes like pregnancy, like genetic abnormalities, like even gender, and create what we call a grading of the embryo. So based on these parameters, biological parameters that the embryologist is looking for, after 5 days, we come up with a criteria to choose the one that we think has the most potential to become a baby, the one that would be transferred back to mommy's uterus or be frozen for later use.
So just to take a step back, and by the way, we hear your dog barking in the background. So clearly your dog is all on board with the work that you're doing.
I actually have 2 dogs.
Two dogs,
3
right?
kids, 2 dogs. It's a full house.
You got a full house there. Well, listen, whichever dog it is, I'm sure both dogs are actually big fans of the work that you're doing. So, but before we get to the work that you're doing, so again, the success rate is, I think you said, between 35 and 40%. And
Uh,
if you can talk about the success rate, the cost, and the emotional toll that this takes on couples before we get into the actual work that you're doing, because I think that that really sets the stage for the importance of what you and the team are doing.
exactly. So because there's such, we're relying on human expertise and domain experts and human subjectivity. The success rates are below as they should be. It's about 25 to 30% across all age groups. It really depends on the clinic and depends on the embryologist and it depends on the physician and so many variables here that this is why most what happens is that most cycles fail. And I'll talk about the global problem in IVF in a minute, but the emotional toll is unbearable. It's very expensive. In the US, one treatment could cost about 20,000, even more.
But that's one treatment, and how many treatments are there? Aren't there usually a number of treatments?
So the problem is that it's not optimized. If it were optimized, then you would say this is how much it costs, but we don't really know. So the average is about 4 to 5 treatments per baby. It could end up to more than $100,000. And so it's the entire journey that's hard, that's costly, it's not accessible. It's you actually have to work while you work for that. It's hard. This is, if you do IVF, this is what you do. It's very hard to do, to pursue career when you do IVF. This is what you do. It takes a toll. It takes it's
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 an
very,
emotional drain on somebody, on a couple, actually.
it's a journey, and
Yeah.
people talk about the uncertainty of the journey. So they don't know how much it will, how long it will take, how much they went, I mean, how much money at the end of the process, what would happen between, if it's a couple, what would happen between them. It's a journey. So the uncertainty here uh, um, is crucial, and so many other variables. So at the end of the day, we said back, at 2018, I was an embryologist, which is the most noble profession in the world, and I miss it terribly. And my partner, Professor Daniel Zeidman, is an IVF physician, and we were working together for many years.
Mhm.
And I said, there must be a better way to do IVF. And in a better way, I mean, not taking the human out of the loop, but empowering the physician, empowering the embryologist, augmenting. I call it augmented IVF. If I had a tool as an embryologist to help me make decisions, it would make my life a lot easier, the patient's life a lot easier. And this tool needs to be something that is like, I once called it a digital biologist. So it's an AI. And this AI model is trained on millions of embryos. And what it does, since it was trained on millions of embryos, it actually, like, imagine it formed a profile of what is successful embryo, which parameters are good, which parameters are not good, how it looks, how it needs to be, everything, the time events, the developmental milestones, when everything should happen for this to be an embryo with the highest chances of success. And this is something that an AI could do better than human. So that's what we did. We actually trained an AI to understand biology, developmental biology. And it's just unbelievably amazing to see how it works. It detects the features that the human eye cannot see, features that are correlated with different outcomes, like pregnancy, like genetic abnormalities. And it helps us as biologists to learn more and understand more about human development and embryonic development. And at the end of the day, I have a tool, press a button, and I get a grading of the embryo, a real grading based on huge amount of data without any human subjectivity. And this grading is basically the quality of the embryo, but it's much more than that. It's a quality of the embryo that's accurate, and I know exactly what is the probability of each and every embryo to implant.
Has there ever been a time that you've looked at that outcome and you've said that might not be correct, or is it
Yeah,
always correct? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, it's a good question because this is real science, and it's based on validation and revalidation and revalidation and revalidating this. And we designed different studies and extensive research. We had 5 years of research until it was good enough to put in different clinics and actually, do a clinical study on it. So now I'm talking, when things are validated and published and presented and peer reviewed, and again, it's science, and there's never 100% in biology, and there's never one size fits all in biology. But I think what we've come up is models that are not only as good as the embryologist or the physician, but are even better than. And this is the real essence of AI that we could apply to medicine in different disciplines. And this is really where you see the change, and where I think incorporating AI into different disciplines of medicine could really, really make a change.
Yeah, so many people, including yours truly, are concerned about AI, but here we find a really beneficial application of it.
Yes, exactly. And what we've shown, and we conducted a series of studies here, that it's not the human versus the AI, but rather the human with the AI that gives the best performance rather than the AI. So the AI itself is not good enough. We have to have the collaboration with the human to get the best performance. And this is why I say it's empowering and not replacing.
And so really at the end of the day, what this AI tool is doing, you are giving the potential to reduce the number of cycles a patient must undergo in the IVF process. That's really what it is, isn't it?
Exactly.
And the viability of the embryo taking hold.
Exactly, because exactly this. It's optimization in the sense of it helps me choose the right embryo for transfer. So, I myself as an embryologist, I know that I give the best chances of this treatment to succeed.
And so a usual woman that goes through IVF, how many cycles does she usually go through before the embryo takes hold? And then what is your success rate then with this AI tool? What's the difference there?
Yeah, so the first question of how many cycles, it really depends on age groups. Age is a
A big
crucial
factor, yeah.
factor in success, right? So, and I'll talk about it in a minute, but age is crucial. But on average, if a woman has to go through 3 cycles, we lower it on average to 1.6.
That's significant. That's not only time, it's money, and it's emotion, right?
It's not only that, it's that you increase the certainty or you reduce the uncertainty. It's the same. And this is crucial for the people going through IVF.
The uncertainty of what? Of the embryo taking hold?
No, it's the uncertainty of what's going to happen. What's the journey like? How much it will cost me? How long it will take? So these uncertainties are taking a toll. So once you have something that's more certain, everything becomes more easy.
Daniella, that's really significant in
Yeah, that's
terms of, in terms of cutting down the number of cycles.
Yeah, that's significant. And I'm always like, it's exciting, and it makes me happy. These things that are make me happy. There's one of the clinics that we worked with in Ireland published a LinkedIn post that they're working with AIVF with our system, and they had an increase in success rates of 30%. 30%. And
that's
this
stunning.
is yeah, it's amazing. And the chairman was explaining that the fact now that they have a system they agree with, they rely on, they trust, and trust is the important word here. They're now changing the pricing model. Instead of a pay per treatment, it's a pay per baby. And this is what we aim for at the end of the day. We want to increase the number of babies born through IVF and make it accessible. So this report's really what makes us all wake up in the morning.
Daniella, can you talk about where this system is available throughout the world? Because I think that anyone that's listening to this that is either going through IVF or knows someone that's going through IVF is going to want to access it.
So we're available, the system is available across Europe, South Korea, South America, and very soon in the US, like tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning. So what kind of approval process do you need for it at all, if at all, here in the United States?
Oh, yeah, of course. We're in the process of doing FDA, and we are fully regulated in rest of the world.
So when you say it's available, let's say, for example, across Europe or across South America, so you have a woman in Lima, Peru, who goes into her local OBG, and says, hey, I am having trouble conceiving. Can we look at IVF? Then is it that any woman can access this? How does that work?
Well, we work with clinics. IVF is a very heavy medical process. So we work with clinics. So clinics that are powered by AIVF are clinics that she needs to refer to.
That are powered by AIVF, powered by
Powered.
this with this system. So it's not that every woman is going to be able to walk into an IVF clinic and have access to it. It's those that are have access to your system.
Exactly. So,
and presumably you would want more clinics to have access to the system so more women can cut down the amount of time that it takes in terms of the cycle of IVF.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really then the end game. I think this is just so incredibly exciting. So really, kol hakavod, congratulations to you and the entire team. I do have some more questions. Yeah, listen, I do have some more questions that I want to pepper you with about this subject, but I think this would be a really good time for us to just take a really quick break and for me to just share with our listeners what I alluded to at the very top of this program, Daniella, that Jewish National Fund USA's Global Conference for Israel will be taking place this coming November 30th to December 3rd in Denver, Colorado. It's a beautiful city. Have you been there, Daniella?
Yeah. And one of my best friends in the world live in Denver. So yeah.
Is that right? You're going to have to tell them to come to the conference then. Once again, it's November 30th to December 3rd, where we invite everybody to join leaders and innovators from around the world, speaking of all things global, who are shaping the future of Israel. Plus, you won't want to miss America's largest Shabbat dinner. So if all of that innovation isn't enough of a draw, a good Shabbos meal is, which we all love, Danielle, right?
Of course.
Listen, visit jnf.org/global to register. Once again, that's jnf.org/global to register and see all the incredible interactive Israel experiences. There are going to be outstanding speakers, unparalleled spirit, aka Ruach, and also wonderful networking opportunities as well. And if that weren't enough, if you're a fan of IsraelCast, and I certainly hope that you are because you're listening to the program right now, yours truly, that means me, will be doing 2 live recordings there of IsraelCast. So I'll be taking audience questions. It'll be a very interactive experience, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. I've always had a great time at these conferences. So once again, jnf.org/global to register, and we hope to see you in Denver on November 30th. I don't know what you're doing November 30th, but certainly you are more than welcome to join.
Thank you. I might join.
All right, I hope so. And listen, tell your friends to join as well. So when we talk again about IVF and those that are able to access it, I was doing a little bit of background homework on the subject, and I want you to address this notion that reproductive care is disproportionately affected in marginalized communities. And if you can address that.
Yeah, I think IVF or reproductive care, what we see, the trend that we see, I think the last decade is that there's huge demand, huge and growing for different reasons. Because we can freeze our eggs, because we want to pursue career, because we want to delay childbirth, because of many reasons. Because new families and LGBTQ and surrogacy and sperm donation and egg donation and all this gets IVF to be in huge demand. But the supply years, the clinics are stuck. This is a problem. It's a global problem. Huge demand over very limited supply. So what if you unstuck the supply, as in you help the clinic scale, you get the IVF to be much more accessible, you lower barriers of entry, then this is real democratization of IVF.
I read a statistic I want you to weigh in on that IVF treatments have led to over 8 million births over the last 40 plus years. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's I think close to 9 million by now, but yeah.
That's actually really significant.
That's really significant, but it's we could do more. You know, we're
Sure.
aiming for a million babies a month.
Say that again.
Million babies a month.
Is that your goal?
This is the goal of the industry. Yeah.
And where are we? And where are you now with it?
It's not us as us, but the goal of the industry, and part of it is getting IVF to be completely democratized and accessible. Mm-hmm. Then you reach this goal, and so part of what we are doing is exactly this: is opening up IVF to everyone that needs it, no matter where you live, no matter how money you have. It's not for the rich. It's not for for the ones that have means. It's for everyone. And I think it's our responsibility as a society to democratize IVF. It's, people do not need to give up their dream of having a baby because they don't have enough money to do so.
Yeah. And let's talk about the economics of it then for a second, because as I understand it, the cost, well, of course, the cost is prohibitive here in the United States, but in Israel, the cost is far cheaper. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so Israel is an interesting model. We subsidize IVF. So it's basically...
The government does.
Yes. So basically, we subsidize IVF. So basically, it's close to zero. So this is translated to as many cycles as needed until success, until a baby. So what we see here is 5% of children born a year are IVF, versus a bit less than 2% in the US. And it's not because we have higher infertility rates. It's just because this is the real need for IVF. And if we take it to the US, only 20% of the need is being served, meaning 80% of the people, of the need, is not being served. So people actually give up the dream of having a baby because it's either not accessible, it's not there geographically, there's what we call IVF desert, or it's too expensive, or they don't have enough money, or whatever, but they give it up.
Could it also be a case that the embryologists, the doctors, are getting it wrong in terms of which embryo is viable?
Yeah, we're human.
Yeah.
So of course, it's since it's not optimized, and you try once, you try 2 times, you try 3 times, and then that's it, you stop. And in Israel, since there's no economic barrier of entry because it's fully subsidized. So we see that at the end of the day, if you try enough times, it's like rolling a dice. You end up with a baby. So this is amazing. But then what happens in the US, you either run out of money, or then you stop after 2, 3 times.
Is Israel alone in subsidizing IVF?
Well, no, I think different European countries have different kinds of subsidizing models. It's not fully subsidized like in Israel, but it's halfway. Yeah, so what we want to do is that you don't have to do it 4, 5, 6 times. You know your chances. You get very clean information, real information based on data. You know your chances, and you know your path. You know your journey.
You know that the success is very, very likely high.
Right. Or and it might happen that you need an egg donation. Mm-hmm. But then you know.
And then you know what to do. Yeah, see, I think that this would be
Yeah.
such a game changer for a country, for example, like Japan, that has declining birth rates. Now, there
Right.
are reasons for declining birth rates. It's not because of infertility per se, but I would have to imagine that there are couples in a country like Japan that are having fertility issues that do want to at least have one child or two children,
Right.
and that they're having difficulty with that.
Right. So it's a global problem.
Yeah.
There's been in China because they changed the law to two children. And so the families that only have one children are now close to 40 years old or above 40, they would probably need IVF. So yes, China is booming, Japan, and it's a global problem.
It really is. You said at the top of our conversation that you're able to select for gender. Did I get that right?
We're working
Or gender is a marker that you see. And I'm just wondering, how does that play into
with,
any conversations that you're having? Because that gets to be a really dicey subject.
yeah, and I'll explain. It's not yet out there. It's under development,
Hmm.
developing it, but there are markers that are correlated to gender. And in gender, I mean, gender selection in IVF is usually linked to any genetic diseases. So some genetic diseases are linked to gender. So what we do now in IVF is we do genetic testing on the embryo. And if for example, there's a genetic disease that's linked to boys, then you would want to transfer a girl, the embryo that's a girl.
Would you ever tell patients um, that it's a boy or girl?
So in such cases, yes, not AIVF, I'm talking IVF in general. Um, if a couple have any genetic disease that they know of, and they do pre-implantation genetic testing, that's testing the embryo for any genetic abnormalities
Mhm.
linked to a specific gene. So again, if this is linked to gender, then what we usually do in IVF is that we transfer the other gender to the uterus. If it's linked to a boy, we transfer a girl, and this is where gender selection is really happening. But again, this is it's not available now. It's under development, and anyway, there's ethical considerations that we are always thinking of, and it's part of discussions with the industry, and nothing is done without um, um, a real meaning or cause.
Yeah, and deep consideration, I'm sure. So, Daniela, by the way, I'm just really curious, what happens to all the embryos that aren't viable?
Um, well, they're discarded. In some places in the world, like in Italy, you're not allowed to discard embryos, so they usually freeze it.
And then
Or
how are they discarded? I'm just really curious. How are they discarded, or they're frozen and they're like in this catacomb in Rome or something? How does
I
that
don't
work?
know.
I'm
No.
not
So
making light of it, but I'm just really curious.
so most embryos that are not viable are dead embryos. So you don't really have anything else to do. So they're discarded. The ones that are viable, the ones that have the highest chances of becoming a baby, are either transferred back to the uterus or frozen. But no one discards embryos that have a chance. It's usually embryos that have zero chance.
So that's also one of the ethical issues. Just, as we sort of, there's a bunch of other questions I want to ask you, but I'm just really curious if you can tick off what are the other sort of ethical issues that you're dealing with.
Well, in AI, one of the things in AI is that it's a black box. So you don't really know what the AI is looking at, and whether it's not biased. So this is something that we're very much aware of, and we keep retraining and revalidating our AI, and there's the explainability issue, and making sure that it's not biased, that it's, you need a huge amount of data from, different places in the world, different population demographics, to make sure that that there's no real bias. But anyway, it's not making the decision on its own. There's always, at the end of the day, an embryologist, a very skilled embryologist, that signs off. So it's not that the AI is selecting embryo. It's that the embryologist is working with the AI, or
working with the information. Yeah, working with the
embryologists make better decisions. But it's always, at the end of the day, the human that makes the decision.
Is this AI system the only one of its kind in the world?
No, there's a few out there now in different stages of development, and I think it's great. It pushes the industry forward, and it makes the industry incorporate innovation and do things better. So I think us as industry of new technologies and AI for IVF and fertility, we're kind of forming a new kind of industry, and it's great.
Well, it's just remarkable, and we should share with our listeners that AIVF was awarded the 2023 Technology Pioneer Award by the World Economic Forum. So congratulations. That must have been a great honor for you to hear that news.
Huge honor. It's just unbelievable, and I'm so grateful and so happy, and there's so much to do that I just can't wait
to see what's next. Well, as we begin to sort of wind down our conversation, what is next in the field? I mean, because as we said, the first test, we called it a test tube baby back in the day, was Louise Brown back in 1978 in the UK. So, we've made such great strides. So what's on the horizon that Daniella is particularly excited about?
I'm talking about digital transformation of IVF clinics, and I'm dreaming of full optimization and even full automation, and getting the patient to be much more engaged and involved. There's a full roadmap ahead of us, and amazing science to do, and amazing AI to develop. So a lot.
Right. Now, there's definitely a place for women in the STEM fields. What do you tell young girls thinking about going into any one of them, into any one of the disciplines? And from the Israeli perspective, what do you also tell them? Because, Israel is such a powerhouse in the STEM fields.
Yeah, never give up. Never take no for an answer. Don't listen to your teacher if they tell you you're not good enough. You are good enough, and do it.
This just must be so incredibly rewarding for you. Every day you're waking up and you are really changing lives.
You don't think
See,
about
your dog agrees with me.
My dogs are just
they agree.
A startup is a journey, and so there's so much to do ahead of us, but it's so rewarding, and such reports like the one of the increase in 30% success rates, is just, this is what really gets you going.
Right. Well, listen, really, again, congrats to you and the entire team. And I can't wait to have you back just to talk about, developments in the field and what AIVF is doing, and just any other thing that you want to talk about, really, as it relates to all of this, because I think it's just so game changing for so many couples that are trying to have a child. And there's nothing more beautiful than bringing a child into the world. And so you're helping people fulfill their deepest dream. So really, congratulations
to
you and the entire team. And before we go, So we want to just share with our listeners, and if we can beg the indulgence of our listeners, let me just share this, is that before we started rolling, Daniella and I were just chatting, and I happened to mention that I was a trained China specialist and that I lived in Asia for many years. And Daniella said, "Oh, I lived in Singapore for 3 years." Now, if you know me well, you, our dear listeners, you know that I spent 9 wonderful years of my life in Singapore, and we lived there at the same time. I actually spent 2 times there. One was 89 to 90, and then from 97 to 05. And here you are. You lived there from 2000 what?
Yeah, to 2004. And it's like a second home to me,
Me
really.
too. So again, I beg the indulgence of our listeners to listen in on our little private conversation before I close the show here. But where did you live?
Club Street.
Oh my gosh. So in Chinatown area. That's a great area. Did you have a whole shop house where you lived?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that must have been fantastic. That was really living the dream then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like I miss it terribly. I miss
Yeah.
Singaporeans. I miss Singapore. I miss the weather. I miss, yeah,
Have you
everything.
been back since you left?
Um, Not really, just a connection, but not really. And I should, and I plan on doing it. So
Yeah, I lived on Gilstead Road at the corner of Dunnern Road and Gilstead Road. So that's right by the Newton Hawker Center, which I think a lot of people know where that is. So that's where I lived. But also, we should share with our listeners, I happened to ask Daniella if she ever listened to radio, and if she said yes, and she actually listened to the station that I was on. We have to give them
yeah,
a shout out, Gold 90 FM.
the best.
you know but I see, I did the weekend show. I did the Latin music show Saturdays, Sundays, 5 to 8. I don't know if you're ever listening then. Encuentro Latino, it
Yes,
was
I
called.
did. I guess I did. I had it was before having kids, so
Mhm.
we were a couple there. Just us, me and my husband. So it was just us listening to radios and working and enjoying life in Singapore. So I think I must have listened to you on 90 FM
All
Singapore.
right. Oh, that's
Yeah.
too funny. And you know what? I'm sure if we dig deeper, we can play, as they say, Jewish geography or even just regular Singapore geography. And I'm sure we have lots of friends in common. But in the interest of our listeners, we are going to leave it right there. Once again, Daniella Gilboa, we want to thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
not only for joining us here on IsraelCast, but really for what you are doing to change and transform lives for the better. So really, congratulations to you, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much. It's just great to be here.
All right. And we'll have info about Daniella and, of course, AIVF on the show notes page of this very episode on our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And of course, we do release new episodes of IsraelCast, of our show, every other Wednesday. And just so you never miss an episode, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. It's so easy. Simply search for IsraelCast. And don't forget to rate and review us, because that really helps us with our rankings, which in turn make it easier for more people around the world to find us, whether they're living in Israel or the United States or even a place like Singapore, where we do have a whole lot of listeners. And you can always enjoy the show by visiting us at our website. Once again, it's jnf.org/IsraelCast. And as I always say, it takes a whole moshav to put IsraelCast together. And for that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, JD Krebs, and Ellie Kadrin. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from Mirrortone Studios right here in the very heart of New York City. And the music that you hear at the top and tail of the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzaddik label. IsraelCast is powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. And for more info about JNF USA, do visit jnf.org. And if you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, Daniella would love to hear from you, and so would I. So email us at israelcast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Steven Shalowitz, thanking you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.